So this right here is a Scully 601 disc cutting lathe. It originally was a fully manual system. It was upgraded with a pitch 18 computer system, and part of that lives here, part of it lives underneath in the base. So signal flow goes like this. We have a source, either a computer or a tape machine, depending. That's usually stuff coming in digitally. We have our rack over here to do any sort of tonal shaping that we need to do. We have high and low pass filters, have a de-esser, we have a Baxandall style EQ, and some mid and side processing. So if there's any extraneous stuff that needs to be taken care of, we can take care of that here. We also have plugins and what have you, but typically this takes care of every bit of processing and manipulation that we need to do. From there it goes to the cutting amps, and those are what actually drive the coils in the head. So after it gets out of those bad boys, it comes back up here to the actual cutting head, and that is two small little drivers mounted at 45 degrees, and they manipulate a very, very small stylus here, little ruby cutting head here, and that is what actually cuts the groove into the disc here. Play some audio here. It's coming out of the monitors, of course. But if I turn the monitors all the way down, and that's what's actually getting put down onto the disc, is that information we're sending out of these little coils into a groove. So basically what's going on as the system is cutting is this platter will spin, and let me just turn it on. So the platter will spin, it locks at 33 1/3 or 45, depending on whatever we're cutting. And the computer controls this here drive motor, which is belt fed to this, which goes all the way through. And you can see it's actually the feed screw. So there's a screw down here. And what happens is this whole carriage on top here moves back and forth. So what happens is, this is what engages or disengages this whole carriage from that feed screw. So when it's disengaged, I can just roll it freely. But when I engage it with the feed screw, it locks into it. And that's what actually pushes the whole carriage over. So the computer then controls how quickly this whole carriage progresses into the disc area. And anytime I do a gap, I put a gap in, it'll do a little fast forward. If I'm at the end of the disc and I need to do a lead out, I hit the lead out button, it'll go all the way out and create a lock groove. But yes, basically the computer controls that drive motor. That then drives your feed screw. And when the carriage is locked into it, that is what actually moves the cutting head across the surface of the disc. So with the disc on, pop the vac on, and the vac actually does two things. The vac will hold the disc down on the platter, keep it from slipping, and hold it nice and flat. And then it also, there's a tiny little tube that comes down on the back of the head here and has a hose that runs there. So as you're cutting a groove, you're cutting away material from the disc. That material's got to go somewhere. And if you don't suck it up with the vac, it would just be stringy all over the disc, and we don't want that. And then lastly, there's also a heating circuit that runs a small amount of electricity through the stone, which helps it just cut cleaner and quieter and all that. All that stuff is ready. I'm going to reset the computer just to make sure there's no lingering flags or anything. Give it a second. It takes a second to fully boot back up. Cool. Now from here I can kind of show you, I'll show you how. Outside here would be like the test area. Normally these are 14-inch lacquers instead of 12 inches. So you have a little bit of outside area on the disc to do test cuts and make sure that everything looks good and is ready to go. And then when you're ready to go, you use the computer to then cut in the actual disc area here. But what we need to do first, turn the heat on and hit lead in and drive the feed screw. Now normally this is where I would have dropped the head and you'd be starting your record, but we're just testing right now. So I'm gonna manually skip this little ways down the disc here, lock us back into the feed screw. Feed screw still moving. So, and it's very important that things are moving. You don't want the stone into the disc surface and cutting over and over again. You also don't want the stone being down and dragging it across. It will shatter it. So we don't want to do that. They're expensive. So now I can drop very gently. And now we are in the disc. Heat is going. Take a look and visually inspect. Those all look nice. Everything looks good. So now I can feed some audio. I'd like to hear playback arm if I can land it here. Hard from this angle.
Just the vinyl?
Yeah, it's not perfectly synced up because we're doing it a little bit wild, but so this is coming from the computer. This is coming back off the feedback amp. And that's what's actually coming off the tone arm. So to me it sounds good, better, best.
Yeah.
Like I like the sound of the digital source. It sounds kick-ass. The amps give it a little something, and then going through all of this and being reproduced, I think. I mean, just like listen, it's good, it's crisp, it's clear. You know, nothing wrong with it at all. A little bit livelier once it's in the analog realm and getting amplified. A little bit more full, nice rich bottom end. Like, to me it sounds kick-ass. Like I like that so much better. Go back to the program here. Get this out of
high end, so much silkier.
Yes, it has a nice, pleasing, like smoothing out effect. Not dull at all, but just like gives it this really pleasant. It's really hard to explain, but just nice and smooth, not harsh, nothing like that. This is the Pitch 18 system from a guy named Flo, and it is a very similar to like a Neumann computer system. It works in the same kind of way. It actually does more analyzing like per rotation than the Neumanns do. So does a better job at packing the material. The computer controls the speed of the carriage at all times. It allows for much more effective and efficient packing of information on the disk, while also preventing things from going wrong, to prevent we call them kiss cuts or overcuts, which either one can completely ruin a disc. So it's a very useful tool in that sense to keep everything on the rails, and like I said, just allows us to cut longer sides more consistently. It also controls where the head is lifted and dropped, so takes a lot of the manual stuff out of it and makes things a lot more repeatable. But if I needed to, so let's say I was looking at this and I decided, okay, these things are a little bit too close together, I could just make an adjustment on the land here, and that would just tell the computer, hey, I want to shoot for this kind of spacing instead of this. And then also, like as you're cutting, as it's spinning, the time remain gives you kind of a rough guesstimate of how much time you have left on the side. So like if it's spinning here, oh, I got it. That's why. Doi. So what it'll actually do, and you reset it and everything so it doesn't have any old information in there, but it's pretty handy to have an approximate time left on the discs, because you know, like I've got the side that's this long. Am I going to make it, or am I going to run out of steam?
Right.
And if you don't have that, you're really just flying by the seat of your pants, and you could get all the way, all the way through your disc and realize like, oh my goodness, I'm just 30 seconds short. I'm not going to make it, which is, not a great feeling, and it burns the whole disc. So it's never good. So like here, I'm heads up, so I don't need to worry about it. But I go there, I go mark lead in.
Would that typically be down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and this would be controlled by this box here. So for all intents and purposes, the computer thinks that it is cutting right now.
Right.
So it's giving me a reading of 20 minutes and 56, and the time is actually going up because I'm not feeding it any audio. So it thinks that it's got spacing, it's unmodulated groove. Now the second that I start feeding it audio,
because it dynamically controls the spacing.
yes.
Oh,
So like,
so as soon as there's waves going on, then it drastically changes the amount of time you have left.
yes. So sometimes you'll actually gain time back in quiet sections on a disc, which seems like how are you like gaining back time or whatever, but that's really what it's doing. It only can look so far ahead, and it knows the settings that you got. So if I decided that I needed to open this up more, I could take the land here and bump it up a few notches, or conversely, I could put things tighter if I feel like I need to pack a little bit tighter. I can also, because it's like a totally, analog thing, another way to get more space on a disc is to simply just turn it down, because if you think about it, more powerful sound waves coming from a source, more energy, that means a bigger groove, and you multiply that by all of the times that you're going around and around and around, that takes up space. So one of the things you can do to create more space for yourself is just knock the volume back, but you don't want to go too far down, because then you'll have a boring, quiet, non-exciting record that'll sound, you'll hear more of the record surface sound than you will of your material. So you want to like have the best signal to noise ratio as you're going. A lacquer master, it'll go off to a plating and pressing plant, sometimes a separate plating plant, but typically under the same roof, plating and pressing. They use a chemical bath with and they use electricity to draw the metal onto the disc, spray it with silver, put it in a nickel bath, few generations, and basically what happens is you get your stampers are derived off of this disc. It's sprayed with silver, nickel bath, gets pulled into all those grooves. You pull it out, you have a father version, you create another metal version off of that it creates your mother, and then off of the mother you can create stampers. And because the metal is a much more stable material, many stampers can be made off of the same mother copy, whereas this copy is destroyed in that process. But all of the information, even the little hand-scribed matrix numbers and initials that we put on a finished disc, all of that makes it all the way to the very end. So it's pretty nifty if you go to if I go to a record store and something that I cut and I open it up, cut open a brand new copy and pull it out and then see my little signature on it, like that's pretty cool feeling. So definitely something I enjoy about this kind of work.
What got you interested in cutting vinyl?
Well, it kind of just happened like I've worked for Marsh Mastering for many years. Started there when I first moved to Los Angeles, maybe 2014, 2015. So many years just doing traditional analog mastering. And some years into it, Chief Engineer Stephen Marsh went out and got this system here. And it was fully manual back then. It was very, very vintage, very old school in every sense of it. But has a lot of soul and DNA and history just as a working record lathe throughout all these years. And throughout all that time, throughout the years, we've slowly gotten it upgraded and modernized to really, it's like having an old classic car, but you swapped out, instead of drum brakes, now you got disc brakes and you've got fuel injection and a lot of the modern things that really make something great, but it still has that soul. So just in working with him through the process of modernizing this thing and all that, and cutting records all along the way, that's just kind of how it happened. And I think it's really special and cool. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do such interesting, cool, challenging work every day.
What got you into audio work?
I originally started in audio way back in Massachusetts. I was playing in bands. I took an interest in audio production and started working at a friend of mine's studio back east, and decided I needed to kind of jump into a bigger pond, as it were. So it was either Nashville or LA, and LA sounded a lot cooler to me. So, packed it up, came out here, ended up landing a job at Marsh Mastering very, very soon after I arrived out here, and, just started apprenticing under Stefan through all those years, and been like 10 plus years since then. And yeah, since then it's been many thousands of songs and tons of records. We've had this system for quite a few years now. So I don't know, time flies.
What makes vinyl important?
I think vinyl is important because it's something real, especially in a world that seems to be becoming much less real. Everything is, streaming, it's AI, it's, harder to really own something and have a physical or meaningful connection to anything anymore. So I really feel that vinyl as a medium is a great way for people to connect and really feel ownership of the music. That goes for artists and for fans of music. You can hold an album that your artist made for you. It has weight. There's artwork, there's lyrics. It's something real that can't get taken down off of a server someday and then you don't own it, or you don't have to pay a subscription to have access to it. If you have a record player and a couple speakers, you'd be able to drop that needle and listen to it. So I think that's special, and it ties us back to just the history of music, through all these decades. So that's why I think it's still special.
What do you find the difference between listening to a digital or a vinyl source is?
I think the difference between listening to a digital source versus vinyl is, everybody talks about the sound of vinyl, and I think that not everybody, maybe they have the wrong idea of what that is. A lot of people think it's the crackly, poppy, and kind of wow being like speed fluctuations. Those are imperfections that we try to avoid when we're cutting and pressing vinyl. So when people talk about the sound of vinyl, I'm a guitar player, so I think it's more akin to like a speaker cabinet. You could have a guitar and an amp or whatever, but you can plug it into 3 different amps and speaker cabinets, and it's going to have 3 very, very different sounds. And it's basically the same concept as a cutting lathe. I mean, you have a source, it could be your guitar, and it goes through a cutting amplifier, which gives it a little bit of coloration and imperfections. It goes through a cutting head, which has its own resonances, and so it's scientifically not a perfect recreation of the source that you're sending into it, but I think it imbues just the same way that we like tape machines. They're not perfect representations of what you put into them, but they're very pleasing to our ears, and there's a reason that we like those sounds. So when we're going through and testing out or doing a cut, I can listen to the computer source, I can listen to the feedback amps, and then I can also listen to this tone arm here. And to my ears, it's always good, better, best. The source always sounds good if it's coming in good. The amps give it some magic, and then once it's actually down on the disc and we're listening back off the tone arm, I think it just sounds incredible. So that's the real sound of vinyl in my opinion.
So do you need any kind of special masters in this arena?
I do get asked quite often if special masters are required if you're planning on cutting vinyl. And realistically, the short answer is no, you don't. Any adjustments that need to be made to the audio, your cutting engineer should be more than capable of doing to optimize it for their system and for just the format of vinyl in general. So really just like let us do our thing and get your audio right for being put on a disc. If there were any crazy issues that we couldn't just handle ourselves, then you would just kind of cross that bridge when you get there. But typically 99.99% of the stuff that comes in is totally fine, and the system will cut it just no problem at all. So best to just leave it to us. All right, so this might be an urban legend. I'd have to confirm it, but we do have a nickname for the lathe. It's called the Doll Lathe. To the best of my knowledge, we'll have to double check and fact check me here, but to the best of my knowledge, it was originally used by Mattel, I believe, but a toy manufacturer that used to make little toy dolls, and they had a pull string, and they would speak and do all sorts of things, but those were just tiny little records. So this system was at one point modified to do those very small discs, and that's actually one of the reasons why this system is a little bit unique in that you can see this little metal nipple here has a couple little holes in it. Now normally what that is for is you have a vacuum system, which you can hear there when I engage it. But normally you would have to hook up a hose that would pop right on top of there, and that's what actually would hook into all the channels in there and drive everything else that's vacuum driven. But because it was the Doll Lathe, this whole cutting head would have to push in too close and would interfere with that. So the vac tube had to be rerouted to a different part of the platter underneath and allow the cutting head to get much closer. So if you look at other Scullys, they typically, you'll see a little vac hose coming down onto this because that's just normally how it works. But to the best of my knowledge, that is the reason why that this vac is routed differently. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why we call it the Doll Lathe.